So let's get working on the Summerana Fine Art and Painterly Actions, which I created myself. And let's get going. So they're really easy to use. I'm going to come to this first one. You'll see that there are 2 actions within the set. We're going to play the first one. It's going to start with a few prompts, just reminding us how to use our layers. I'm just going to speed past these for the sake of our editing time, because we're going to go over all of this while we edit as well. But these are just little reminders how to use each layer to its best. So once we're loaded here, first thing I like to do is come to my background layer, and I'm just going to clean up really quick, just so that I have a good base for our image to start at. So I'm going to come in close. I'm going to grab the clone tool. At a 0% hardness, I'm going to bring my opacity down to around the mid-20s. I just want to clean up under her eyes just a bit. Using the clone stamp, I'm just going to select an area under where I want her eyes, just to soften this darkness up a little bit here. We live in northern Illinois, so we get these lovely dark under eye circles in the winter, and I just like to soften them up just a pinch. All right, that looks good, gives us a nice base to start with. So let's close this up. Within this action set, I like to start with the burning and the shadows and the dodging of the highlights. First, I'm going to start with the dodging highlights, and there's many ways to do this. I personally like using these overlay layers and just coming straight here to the dodge and the burn tool. That's how I like to pop my highlights and work in my shadows, which is how I made this action set. So each layer is very easy. These are all of my hand editing steps just placed into an action. So hopefully you will find them just as easy as fun to use. Okay, we're going to scoop in. And when I start my dodging, I start low. So I'm going to start in the low teens. And I'm just going to start painting on light where I see it naturally hitting her face. So with this soft opacity, this low in the teens, I'm just going to come here where the highlights are already working on her face, on her neck, a bit on her arms, just to pop the light that we already have within the image itself. So from there, let's go just a swoop over the top of the eyes. We're going to bring that opacity up now. We're going to come into about the mid to high 20s. And we're going to do the same thing. Now I like to start at a low opacity just so I can keep painting on as it see fit, because each image is kind of different on how I want that light to hit and be seen. And again, just painting over the areas that are already kissed by the natural light. I didn't like that. We're going to go back on that. A little bit on the cheeks again, just in those little triangles. I'm going to come here over her eyelids, and this just helps bring that definition back to the eyes so that our focus goes right to the parts that we want. Go to her hands. And again, just brushing that light where it's naturally hitting. I'm not hitting any of the shadows. I want to keep my light as natural as possible. All right, now we're going to take this exposure up a bit more, about halfway, and I'm going to paint light onto her hair where I know she has natural highlights and where the sun is kind of kissing in those little areas there all through here. We can see there's some sun here. Wherever there's lighter hair or a little bit of that glimmer, I like to just pop that. So I'm just amplifying the light that's already in my image. All right, I'm also going to come to her dress, start painting again, just where we already have light here. There we go. And just like it does with the skin, it's just amplifying what we already have. So making our image a little more painterly. There we go, looking great. I'm also going to come up here to, this is a beautiful palm tree. I'm just going to pop the light on these a little bit. On each strand I'm going to come into and just kind of quickly throw some light. All right, now I'm going to bring this exposure up a little bit more. And I'm going to brush light on all of this over here. This helps for me. It like pops the light that's already in there. And it also brings out more colors that were hidden in the background that were kind of tucked away in those shadows. We'll see here, there's a great tree too. It's got some beautiful vines. And doing all of that helps really pop that color in the background that I love. So I think we're looking great. Let's come up here. We're going to bring that opacity back down to the 30s. Bring my brush smaller, and I'm just going to go one swoop over each eye to get those whites, and then I'm going to take a couple swoops and clicks and just go till I feel like it's really popping the natural color of her eyes, which are these beautiful green and yellow. I'm going to go a little bit over her lip, just there, and just kiss the edge of her nose here with a little bit more sun, a little bit more light. We'll see it starts to give that beautiful dewy skin kind of color, which a lot of us love. We can see already what the highlights have done here. All right, so our next will be burning shadows. And I know I'm starting off in the middle of my action. I kind of have it organized in different ways for different people to use. We have kind of makeup things set up here, color, then we have the dodging and the burning, then we have some other things down here which we'll go over as well. But let's keep going, and we're going to work the burning shadows. Now I'm going to come to my tool over here. This time we're going to select the burn tool. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to start low, and this time I start under 10%, so anywhere from 5 to 8%. All right, we're going to scoop back in. Now I'm going to amplify the shadows that are already on the image. So like we did with the highlights, we're going to do the shadows as well. And I just want to hit the areas around her face that are already being kissed by that little bit of shadowing. Okay, we've got a little bit of Cupid's bow there, and this helps kind of bring back what's also distorted by a little bit of this flat light that I had working here. Go over the eyebrows. I like dodging and burning facial features because it really helps pop. All right, I'm going to come in closer. We're just going to swoop along this line of the nose. You can see it's really bringing out those details that we have there. Okay, now that we're closer, I'm going to bring this exposure way up, around 76-ish. No rhyme or reason, I just slide it all the way up. And I'm going to come around here around her irises. So this, I'm just going to circle around, will help again bring attention to the face, to the eyes, really make those eyes pop. All right, let's scooch back a bit. We're looking great. So now what we did with the highlights, we want to do with the shadows. I don't necessarily do it on hair, but I will come to the skin, and we're going to work it that way. So we're going to bring our exposure back down, bring our brush size, and again, just painting into the areas that have shadows, bringing back some details. Oops. Just looking for the darker edge. There we go. Be right in here. That was a little bit too much. Let's bring our exposure back down. All right, now I'm going to bring that exposure back up. Again, just sliding back and forth as to where we see fit. And we are just going to paint on the darker areas of the dress as well. And this will help pop those details just the same as the highlights did. All right, keep working. Looking for the darker areas, the folds in the dress. And again, just painting. Now I use a mouse, I don't use a pen or anything of the sort, so I'm just clicking away at this. I think we're looking fantastic. So let's see just a little before and after from this little bit of what we did. So shadows and highlights already made a huge difference in our image. So from here, now I kind of go down the sliders and work them as each layer as it is. So lips and cheeks. You can click this little button right here. This is how I like to do it at least. And it's going to open the color picker. I like to take the little eyedropper and come to my subject's lips or to a natural place where they have that already rosy kind of color that we can add just to amplify again. So I'm going to pick right in about there, click OK. We can see the opacity of this layer is set at 10%. So I'm going to grab my brush, again a black layer. We want a white brush. Make sure you're clicked on the layer mask itself and not the layer. So clicking on the layer mask, want a white brush. I'm going to bring my opacity all the way up. And I'm just going to show you guys, paint on a little bit of the cheeks. It's very subtle, a little bit of that rosy color. You can make it more by just bringing up this slider. You can see what that does. That's why we leave it a little bit lower. So I think right about here, the 25, I like how that looks. Also going to paint just a little bit more color onto her lips. You can even come up here to her eyes. I'm just going to bring the opacity down because I want this to be really subtle. And just a little swoop over her eyes just to give a little bit of that sun-kissed color, especially in these winter months, though this was shot in Georgia, which was so beautiful. All right, so that looks great. Face highlights, you can use this also like a dodging. And again, with the color, you click the color picker. It's going to open up. Going to give you your eyedropper tool. I come to a highlighted part of the skin. Click on that. Move it around. See where you want that nice bright highlighted skin color. You can paint on more highlights if you want. I don't always necessarily use this because I love how the dodging works, but the same kind of idea. So this opacity is set to 100%. So now watch your opacity levels. And again, it's going to slide depending on where you want that highlighted color to go. So just softly painting it on, adjusting your opacity as you go. This is going to kind of soften up the skin too. And again, I'm just painting on where the sun is naturally hitting and kissing the skin. Right, a little before and a little after, so just a little extra pop of that glowy, dewy skin. Okay, so vibrance. This is a layer that you can either use all at once or you can paint it on. When you have a black layer, you can hit, I'm on a Mac, a Command I, and that'll turn it to a white layer, and you'll see this will reveal all of the vibrance, all of this layer behind it. All of these layers work like that when they're black. I like to, or when they're white, I mean, I like to have them as a black layer so I can then paint on where I want this color versus it being over the entire image and then painting it off. So again, a black layer, a white brush. My hardness is almost always at a 0. And we are just going to paint on where we want that pop of color, that vibrance to go. Okay, I'm going to bring my opacity up for her dress. You can even bring it up more to really pop that blue in there. And I'm going to actually leave this high opacity here for this tree. Ooh, maybe not too much yellow. Bring that out. Bring that opacity down, and now let's brush on. There we go. Pop in those golden tones that were in the background. And again, this is why I have these opacities set to 100% because I do adjust as I go along on what opacity I want these to be at. So just going to give a little pop to her lips, a little vibrance pop to the eyes. And again, subtle, but gives this great painted look to it. Okay, hazy, I'm not going to use this layer, but I'm going to show you guys what it is. Again, if we turn it inside out by inverting it, so turning a black layer to a white layer with a Command I, we can see it gives that hazy effect to our backgrounds. This you can use, again, just the same, a black layer, a white brush, and paint it on where you want. You could paint it on, oops, let's bring our opacity up for this guy. I don't want to use it on this image, though it would work beautifully on this image, but just to show you guys. There we go. Okay, I'm going to just delete that, don't want that there. There's also a boosting contrast. So again, if I turn it inside out, you'll see what this does. A little popping contrast for it. I think we will use this layer just a bit. So again, a black layer, a white brush. And I'm just going to pop it to that tree back there and maybe just here to the upper edge of the image. Looking great. There's also a lifting shadows, so we can see if we turn this one inside out, what that does, it's going to brighten up. And this is great if you have a darker image where you just want to paint on bits of light again. So we could paint it on, see here, in this tucked away hair. And that's going to give that a little bit more of a pop, bringing back some of those details that get lost in the shadows. But I kind of like the shadows on this one, so we're just going to turn that layer off, or we could erase it all back. So when you have a black layer, you could use a black brush, and that will then erase what you painted on. Easy peasy. There's also a muted greens. This is great for spring when you have those really bright neon greens. We don't have that in that image, so I don't want to use it, but just to show you, if we flip it inside out, it's going to mute those greens, and it's going to bring a much cooler cyan kind of tone to it. So again, that's great for spring. We also have a fall burst, which is great for the fall when you want to take those greens again and warm them up. I don't want to use it for this image either. I like it just how it is. And then lastly, there's a sharpening layer. And I always sharpen last, which is why I have it all the way at the bottom here. A black layer, a white brush, and I'm going to leave this opacity almost all the way at the top. We're going to come in here, and I like to paint it along the hair, paint it along the details of the dress, and then along the details of the edge of the nose, the lips, and around the eyes. And I think we look great. So here's where we started, and here's where we finished. And this is just with our first action in this Fine Art and Painterly set. So now that I have all of this complete, I'm going to flatten it, and we're going to run this next action, which is the Painterly finish. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to press the play, and we're going to let this action work. It's going to give us an oil paint filter and some other great pops that you can additionally add to your image for like a finishing touch. Just give this a moment to go. If you guys have any questions, we would love to hear it in the comments. I'm here to fully support you guys in all of this and make sure that these actions are as easy to use as I find them. All right, so we can see there's layers all in black. So if we want to see what they do, we can just flip them inside out. So Command I. There's another Pop Me layer, which is another great contrast. There's a Color Me layer, which is going to give you more vibrance, an extra little pop of color. And there's a Paint Me, and this one we are going to actually paint on ourselves. We'll see it gives us that oil painted finish. So I'm going to click off of that. I think I am going to use the Pop Me just a bit. So again, a black layer, a white brush. I'm going to bring this opacity a little bit closer to half, but not quite. And then I'm just going to pop it on her eyes, maybe these lips a little bit, into the hair. Along our fingers there, and I think that's good. Actually, I did kind of like it a pinch on these ferns coming in here. And again, it's subtle. I don't like huge dramatic changes. I like little ones that then, when you look back at your image, like, oh my gosh, that was so easy to do. All right, so from here, then we're going to go to Paint Me. This, I'm going to bring my brush all the way to 100%. And now a black layer, a white brush. I'm just going to paint on that oil painting look to my background. My tree back here. I'm going to bring that opacity down. And I'm just going to work through the other areas. So I like to paint it on the hair. A little bit lower. I like to paint it on the wardrobe. Down here as well. I don't like to put it on the skin. I like to avoid that. So just onto the hair. We can see if we scooch in close what that does. It gives us that beautiful, smooth, painted look onto our image. without being overly dramatic with it. All right, guys, so that is it. Let me just flatten this. Let me save it, and we can see our before and our after. Just grab where we started. All right, so here's where we were, and here's where we ended. Awesome. Hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you in the group and the academy.